Cheers, greetings and salutations. Willkommen and bienvenue to a webinar for your wanderlust presented by Lonely Planet and smugmug.com and featuring our very special guest, Pathfinder Connor the Fella McNeil. And on behalf of all of our adventurous photo fanatics here at SmugMug and Lonely Planet, I'd like to thank you for setting aside a portion of your valuable time to join us. My name is Sean Rogan. I'm very pleased to be your host today. I'm a senior manager here at SmugMug. A little bit about myself. I'm tied to the business and marketing departments, and among the many hats I wear, I am SmugMug's webinar czar. We're pleased to let you know this webinar is being recorded as well for time-shifted viewing. Everyone in attendance today will receive an email within the next few days, which will include a web link so that you can watch this webinar again if you wish, and of course share it with others if you believe they might find it of interest. And finally, before we get started, I just want to take a moment to send our thanks out to our friends at Nikon and our friends at Three-Legged Thing and our friends at F-Stop Gear for their support for this event and presentation. I think that's everything. Right then, on with the main event. Let's introduce our distinguished panel right here, starting with the ladies. First, representing Lonely Planet, please welcome Maria McKenzie. Hi, Maria.
Hi. Thanks for having me. My name is Maria McKenzie. I am the social communications manager for Lonely Planet. So that involves me looking after all 30 of Lonely Planet's social media platforms, the global social media strategy that we have, and I also look after the Pathfinder scheme, which we'll talk a little bit more about a bit later. And so it's a very busy job. Lonely Planet keeps me on my toes at all times. But when I'm not at the helm of all of our social media, I do obviously love to travel. So I'm very fortunate I get to travel to Barcelona quite a bit because I have family there. I've also had the opportunity to work from Canada. I just got back from a weekend in the English Cotswolds where we stayed in a nice vineyard, which was really nice, and experienced the growing trend of English wine. And yeah, that's me. Thank you very much for having me.
Well, you're very welcome. I'm amazed that you had time to be with us today. I expect with all that traveling, the Lonely Planet guides come in very handy. Thank you for being here, Maria. Let's turn our attention to our next guest. Great to have her on our panel today from SmugMug's European operations, the inimitable Lauren McNeish. Hi, Lauren. Cheers.
Hey, Sean. Good to be joining you all. It's great to have you all here. I'm joining you today from sunny Scotland. I work in the marketing team at SmugMug, and we get to partner up with some great friends, just like Lonely Planet and Connor. We're super excited to be doing this webinar. I've always been a big fan of Lonely Planet and their guides, so this is a sort of personal project for me as much as it is for SmugMug, and we're super excited to put this event together. And me personally, I can't wait to hear Connor's story tonight, and I know you're going to love his photographs.
Great to have you on the panel today, Lauren. And again, thank you so much for putting this all together. This was your brainchild, so we really appreciate it. All right, and now, without further ado, to our guest of honor, I am pleased to introduce you all to a consummate wanderer, esteemed photographer, and Lonely Planet Pathfinder, Connor the Fella McNeil. Connor, thank you so much for joining us today.
Hey, thanks, Sean. I'm absolutely delighted to be here. I've been a big fan of SmugMug and Lonely Planet for many, many years now, and it's great to be working with them at the minute. And I want to say a big thanks to everyone that's turned up to this webinar. I believe you said we've got close to 1,000 people watching, so it's good to know there's no pressure there. So for those of you that don't know me, I'm a professional travel and destination photographer. I do that full time. I basically, what people would say is a dream job. I travel the world. I go to amazing locations. And I take photographs of it. It sounds easy, and it pretty much is quite easy, actually. I just happen to get the luck of the draw, and that's my job now.
I love the fact that you say it's easy. If you do what you love, you're never really working, right?
Actually, yes.
Let's get a little background here, Connor. How did you get started in travel and landscape photography? You're a regular guy. You're out there. You're doing your thing, and then suddenly.
Oh, I think it's the first time I've been called a regular guy. Thank you very much. The photography was actually a byproduct of the traveling. Uh, Years and years ago, I think 6, 7 years ago, I wanted to see the world and I wanted to explore because I'd not really done much of that before. But a lot of the people watching here have probably felt the same way, that you arrange with a couple of friends to go traveling and they say, oh yes, I can't do this month, I'll do next month. Next month rolls around, oh no, can't get the time off work. How about sort of later in the summer? Okay, I'll wait till then. You go through a year, 2 years, and you've not actually traveled anywhere. So I was tired of this and I thought, I'm just going to travel on my own, just pick places that I want to go to, and every month I'm going to go away, I'm going to see somewhere new. Uh, the problem with traveling on my own was I thought that I'm quite fickle and I might get bored. So I bought a cheap camera off Amazon, and I thought this will keep me occupied while I'm traveling. So I just went traveling, took some snapshots, and the love for the photography started to grow out of that. And it changed from being something I do in my sort of spare time when traveling to it kind of morphed into the whole point of why I would travel. Instead of saying I'm going to go there and I might take some photographs, I would see somewhere amazing and say, that's where I want to go to take photographs. So sort of part of the way through my journey, the whole point of traveling changed for me.
Tell us some of the places you started off going. Let's do some of that.
I sort of made a New Year's resolution the year that I started traveling. It was January. I bought my camera and I thought I want to go away every month this year. Therefore, I couldn't go away on long trips. I had a full-time job as a web developer. So I just picked cheap places that I could go to in Europe for a weekend. And originally I sent a tweet out and I just said, does anyone want to go traveling? I want to go somewhere at the end of this month. A friend replied saying, how about Copenhagen for the Winter Jazz Festival? I said, why not? A couple of days later, flights were booked, hotels were booked, and off we went to Denmark. And then I tried to make a habit out of that. So every month, or sometimes every couple of weeks, I'd go away. And people would say to me, how can you afford to go away so much? But having the joys of living in Europe is that we can fly from London to anywhere in Europe for 40, 50 pounds, less than £100. So that's where that sort of level of travel started to come from, where every month I could be in a different location. And I'd talk to my friends in work and they'd say, oh, what did you do this weekend? I said, oh, I went off to Morocco, or I was in Italy, or I went to Slovenia.
You poor bugger.
Yeah. But so all my friends were like,
when did this start?
I think this was, 2010, 2011. I think it might have been 2011, actually, yes.
That's a long way to come. That's a lot of miles in 6, 7 years as well.
Well, yes. After the first year of kind of getting the travel bug, I decided that instead of going away every month, which was fun, but I wanted to do slightly longer trips in slightly more sort of exotic places. And it's not like I can fly from London to Beijing for the weekend. It's possible, but you don't really get much time there. So my trips became longer and further afield, but less often. So it was every couple of months or every 3 months instead of every 1 month.
All right. So how did Lonely Planet's guides fit into this? How did you find them, and how helpful were they?
Well, I think that there isn't a single traveler that doesn't know about the Lonely Planet guides. When I sort of started in all those years ago, I was looking forward to getting the books, buying those books and reading them on the plane and bringing them with me. Sometimes I'd know exactly where I'd want to go, and I'd see Lonely Planet has a guide for that. Fantastic. Or sometimes, I don't know whether they still do it now, but some of the smaller countries used to be grouped together with some guides. So I'd think I want to go to this country, and I get the guide, and the guy would have another country, another 2 countries, and I'd read that and go, oh, okay. So maybe my trip should be slightly longer, and I'd go all the countries that had been contained in that guide. And then thankfully a few years later, with mobile phones and the popularity of the iPhone, and then the apps started to come out, and you can get them in PDFs and things like that. So it really helped me with bringing my hand luggage when I didn't have to bring so many books around. But yeah, I used the Lonely Planet not only for research once I picked a place, but inspiration to find new places as well.
Maria, I didn't know about the apps. When I discovered it, it was books and only books. And I'm like, oh, how great would that have been if there was an app that I could have downloaded something when I landed somewhere. So you find Lonely Planet, off you go, and that's 2010, 2011. Let's move into whatever it was you were doing beforehand. So you're traveling on weekends when time permits, you're exploring new places, you're adventuring, you're shooting, you're starting to gain a little recognition out there. When did it start to see like, hey, you know what? I'm doing this and I'm trying to make money to go do this, but maybe I could just make money doing this. How did that work out?
That was a slow transition. There wasn't sort of a moment of clarity. The more years that I shot, I'd put some of my sort of photos on social media, and then I'd put them on a few sort of stock websites. And people would ask to license them, or people say, "Can I have a print from this?" And again, because I had everything hosted on SmugMug, it's very easy. There's a built-in like sort of print lab with those. So people would say, "Can I buy prints off this?" And I was like, at first it surprised me. I was like, "Why would anyone want this photo on
How
their
much
wall?"
will you give me for it?
So then having it on SmugMug made it really easy to start selling prints. And the more I sold of those and the more people inquired about licensing, I thought, hang on, there could be a sort of business around this. And then some people started asking me for some lessons on how I processed and how I shot. So I'd start doing sort of one-to-one lessons around that. And the idea started to creep in that, people are willing to pay to learn how to do this and to look at my work and to use my work. So then the plan started hatching to build up this sort of business on the side, and then eventually leave work. And then I think it was about 2 or 3 years ago, I finally, set up my own business, get severed ties with my company, and I was like, I want to do this full time because it was just my passion. As you said earlier, if you're working in your passion, it doesn't feel like work. It's, as much as I loved my old job, sitting behind a desk just didn't compare with traveling the world. And, I'm earning less than I did in a full-time job, but I'm so much happier. The freedom that you get and the joy from life, it's absolutely fantastic.
Did you have any experience with photography, prior to 2010? Was that your first real camera pickup, or had you some background in it already?
I had a little bit of background in it when I was in school, when I was about like 14 years old, I think. We had a photography class, and I had, a 35mm film camera there. The type of ones where you just snap anything you wanted, and then you'd send it down to Boots, our chemists in the UK, and it would come back 2 weeks later with stickers that said out of focus on it. So it didn't quite have the same feeling.
Yeah, so and you had to be a lot more careful with what you were pointing at too, with your 36 shots max.
Indeed, yes. Yeah, now with digital it's unlimited, so you don't care what you take.
And you still got charged for the out of focus photos too. This is out of focus, but it's still a quid.
Oh yeah, 90% were out of focus, and I still had to pay full price.
For you kids out there, I don't remember what this was like, but tell me, Connor, do you feel like the last 5 or 6 years feels more like 20 or 30 years versus the previous years before that feel like they went by like that? Do you feel like you're getting so many more new experiences and so forth that time almost seems to slow down?
I guess in general, my whole concept of time is completely skewed one way or another. Being freelance, self-employed, anyone that's watching knows that, and also being a traveler, and combining these things, I don't know what day of the week it is, what time it is. It's very confusing. So definitely the last few years I've definitely more enjoyable time than the previous ones. I think because I have less of a routine that affects the way that time feels to me. Where going into an office sort of 9 to 5, things almost become a little bit monotonous. Even if you enjoy it, then that affects the passage of time.
The repetitive.
Now I don't know what I'm doing next week.
It compresses. That's something I've always found when I'm on the road for extended.
Yeah, so this is more exciting anyway.
Yeah.
A little bit more nerve-wracking because it's exciting because I don't know what I'm doing next week. and it's nerve-wracking because I don't know what I'm
Don't
doing
know
next
what
week.
you're
It could be,
Will I
earning money or not
will
be.
I have food?
Yeah, exactly. Will I be able to afford rent? Probably not.
Jeez. All right. This goes on. In fact, there's two topics I wanted to broach. Just you mentioned SmugMug in there. One of the things I noticed when I was kind of looking into your background a little bit, you opened your SmugMug account about 2011 or something. And
Okay.
if you don't mind me dropping the name, I noticed that you were referred by Trey Ratcliffe.
Yes, indeed.
Trey hosts on SmugMug as well, and we love his work. We've got a long-standing relationship with him. So I'm taking it he was kind of an influencer.
I think anyone that sort of was into photography back in sort of 2011 couldn't have failed to know sort of the work of Trey Ratcliffe. He was a pioneer in the early sort of combining exposures and things like that. And he was definitely a big influence, not only in the travel, but in the style of photography that I started doing. And then sort of doing some research on him, I saw that everything was hosted by SmugMug. So I started to look into SmugMug and then found through that other sort of great photographers that then I would start to follow their work. And some of them I've become friends with. People like Elia Locardi, Blame the Monkey. He's a big SmugMug user. Fantastic work as well, travel photographer. We've met and shot together. He's an absolutely fantastic guy as well. And so I've almost made sort of photography friends through the connection of SmugMug, because I noticed that a lot of the people that I admired, the professional photographers, were using SmugMug. So I obviously thought that's the way for me to go. So I couldn't think of using anything else.
You know what? That's one of the beauties of SmugMug. You don't have to be a pro, and you don't have to be established. You can get started and take it wherever you want.
Oh yes, yeah, and I just found it sort of super easy to use. And then sort of I didn't have my own website, so I would use SmugMug as my sort of basis for my photography. And then as I started to grow the business, being an ex-web developer, I wanted to build my own website. And I started doing that. And when it came to displaying the images, I thought, well, you know, there's a fantastic API with SmugMug for any developers out there. I'll just use that to show SmugMug photos on my website. So my website is basically just a shell around SmugMug as well. And again, all my print sales come through that. So yeah, it's an integral part.
Oh, enough about us.
Yeah, it's true. Don't go away.
I want to take you back into something else. And I find it amazing and wonderful and fantastic, and obviously a tribute to your talent and dedication, that you really began this all 6-7 years ago and have achieved so much since then. And I'm just along the whole lines of you having met a bunch of photographers that you admire or perhaps admired before you went into this. I'm just curious, have any of them come over to you at this point and said, "Oh, you're Connor? You're the fella? I love your work," you know, and you get, wow.
There was one guy. I absolutely loved his work. I used to follow him all the time. A guy called Dave Morrow. He's on SmugMug as well, and his work was just outstanding. He was a guy based in Seattle, in the Pacific Northwest, and he did some amazing star stuff and landscapes. And I followed him for, I think it might have been a year and a half. You know, and I just thought this is amazing. And then one day I was going back through my SmugMug sort of gallery, and I noticed that because you can leave comments in the gallery, I noticed a comment saying, "Oh, I love your work." And I looked down, and it was this guy, Dave Morrow. And I was like, "Oh, he knows me as well." So I contacted him, and it turns out that we'd been following each other on SmugMug for, you know, a year and not even realized it. So we got talking from that. And now he's one of my best friends, even though he lives over in the States. And we shoot together every year, and yeah, hopefully see him again this year.
That's a great
story.
story.
A friendship from SmugMug.
I love that. And just when somebody you admire comes up to you and says they admire you, it's such a...
Oh, it's fantastic. And
Yeah.
then finding out that they're a great person as well.
That's always gravy as well there. So
Yeah.
let's move on a little bit. And I'd love to hear from Maria, because I didn't hear about the Pathfinder program until Lauren and Maria reached out to me and said, you know, we want to do this webinar with Lonely Planet. And I'm like, all about Lonely Planet, I'm in. And then I hear about the Pathfinder program, and I'm not even totally clear on what that is. And Maria, I'm sure everybody here knows what Lonely Planet is, but what is the Pathfinder program? Give us some info on that.
Yeah, sure. So traditionally, always, you know, we have been a guidebook publisher and publishing travel books. And in the last like 5 years or so, that has obviously changed because the way that people share their travel experiences has also changed. And our contributors to guidebooks were primarily authors and a small pool of photographers. So as everything kind of shifted, and we've opened up to doing more like travel-y-esque books and not just guides. We still have our guides, but we're expanding them, and we've moved into like magazines and lots of digital products, so like video and photography online and things like that. The contributors that we wanted to work with also changed. So Pathfinders was kind of born out of that, really. And it's our scheme to work with anybody who creates good quality travel-centric content in any form, really. And so, yeah, it's kind of open to, we always want it to be a very fair scheme. So, a big point of Pathfinders was that we didn't want to exploit anybody that we were working with. And yeah, it's open to everybody from like travel bloggers to videographers to Instagrammers like Connor. And I think a similar kind of thing happened where we come across Connor's work and reached out to him and were like, it'd be great if you would join our Pathfinder scheme. Like, we love your travel photography. And the partnership, I guess, started there and went on from there, really.
You reached out to Connor.
Yeah.
And
this was quite early in the scheme. So the scheme's only been around for about 3 years now, just under 3 years. So we do, while there's lots of people that organically sign up for this scheme, we do reach out to people as well that inspire us at the same time.
My experience with Lonely Planet is it's a lot of people contributing for the last 40 years. When I first found it, I remember the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I found it for this planet. I appreciate the fact that you guys have branched out for a more digital world and so forth, and be able to deliver content better. So Connor's a photographer, and you're also having him contribute content beyond the photographs at this point, right?
He's worked with us primarily on Instagram projects. This has obviously extended beyond Instagram, and yeah, it's kind of going on from there, really.
And how'd that work out for you, Connor, being a disciple of the Lonely Planet series and getting that call or that email?
Oh, it was fantastic. I mean, it's a huge honor. I think any travel photographer always has in the back of their mind that they want to do work with Lonely Planet. And often for a lot of people, it's a bit of a pipe dream. It's just like, one day I'll work for Lonely Planet and do some photography for them. And then when they finally they reach out to you and say, I would love to work with you, you have to take a second glance because you don't really believe it. And I think that's the beauty of the Pathfinders program, is that it's no longer, you don't have to be super famous for them to contact you. They can just look at you and say, we like your work, do you want to help us out? And the projects can be quite wide-ranging as well, from a weekend in Dublin, or even if you're traveling somewhere anyway, you can take over the Snapchat or something like that and provide content for them. And then sometimes there's other bigger projects. I think last week there was ones for Nepal and Peru that went out. Sadly, I was away.
I'd like to volunteer for that one.
Yeah, I missed the deadline.
No, I'm in for Nepal. Okay.
Yeah, like that. That's just, these are trips of a lifetime that you can just say, I want to do them and provide content. And I just think it's a fantastic opportunity for anyone, no matter what stage of their career they're at.
I'll say this, and you mentioned it earlier, your early experience with the camera was the 35 millimeter and so forth. So obviously you're not a millennial. Beyond that, one of the things I really do find brilliant today is Lonely Planet can find people without them having to go through the channels. Basically, if you're good, cream will rise to the top in today's digital world, regardless of the bureaucracies or corporate structures or whatever that may have blocked them in the past because they had to get a gig here and published here. Now they publish themselves, and if you're good, you'll get noticed, which is brilliant. And speaking of being good, Your photography is pretty amazing. I've been crawling all over your SmugMug site now for the days leading up to this, and to the detriment of my productivity, I confess I've gotten entirely lost in your images. Pure magic.
Fantastic.
Oh, you're very welcome. I mean, the world knows. I'm not saying anything new here, but I want to thank you for selecting a few of your favorites for us to talk about. I'm going to pull them up, and let me just pull up your site here. By the way, folks, if you want to see more of Connor's work, by all means, download that PDF. It has links to all of his channels. Is this showing up here, guys? Can you see this?
Yeah, I can see it.
I have my 4 favorites. Just wow. Which one would you like to begin with? We'd love to hear a bit about how you got these, where they were, what was going on around them. I mean,
it's difficult for me to choose because I've got a good story about all of them.
all right, I'll choose if you won't. Wait, well let's let Lauren choose. Lauren, you haven't said much. Let's bring you in. Pick a photo for Connor to talk about there.
Well, I've yet to see the Northern Lights, so every time I see a picture I get very envious, so I'm going to go for that one.
I'll tell you what, I'm going to bring this. These are posted on Connor's website here on SmugMug, but one of the neat things is the light box. So let's bring it into the light box. And what you don't see when it's a small little thumb is that's not just Northern Lights. There's a herd of wild horses there.
Well, that was actually that was my first trip to Iceland, and it was my first trip to actually try and find the Northern Lights. Me and my friend Greg Annandale, another great photographer who uses SmugMug as well, just to get that plug in there. And it was a crystal clear night, and we drove off to the Snæfellsnes Peninsula in Iceland, drove around, stopped to make some food. It was about 9 o'clock at night. I say food, it was, squeezy cheese on crackers, so it wasn't a gourmet feast, but it did the job. I think it was about minus 25 that night, so it was pretty cool.
Wow.
This is Celsius, not whatever Americans use, sorry.
And
yeah, so we're standing there, and I looked, and the stars were amazing. The sky was completely clear, and I saw this weird sort of one cloud in the distance. I said, that looks a really strange cloud, just this white thing. So I set up my camera, and I took the photograph, and on the camera it came out as green. And I was just like, we've seen the Northern Lights, this is amazing. And we were dancing around, and then another sort of band of it appeared above us. We're like, this is amazing, this can't get any better. And we watched this for the next sort of couple of hours, and one band kept coming above the other until it was over our heads. And then it started moving, and then purple started coming in, and it was almost like a mist, and it started weaving between each other. So we just drove around until maybe 3 o'clock that night.
all right, so now it's 3 a.m. You've been out here for hours.
Yeah.
You can't get enough of it. The cold.
No,
You also can't feel your fingers, probably at some point. Were you guys camping out, or were you had to head back to a town or something at that point?
Heading back to town would have been great. We were sleeping in the van.
It's sleeping in the
van.
van. All right.
Minus 25. You'd literally wake up with ice on your face. Yeah, and the Northern Lights was so bright. I think this exposure was something like 6 seconds because it was that bright. And the horses weren't really moving because it was so cold. They would just stand there and not do much. So I thought this is a great opportunity to try and get this shot. And just at the direction of the lights, it looked like it was emanating from this mountain. In fact, any photographers watching, there's a famous pointy mountain in Iceland called Kirkjufell. Well, this is the same area, just pointing a different direction. I thought, the aurora looks great, but having an interesting foreground as well just takes it to a different level, I think.
I was wondering about the exposure time on this because it is so bright, and the fact that a 6-second exposure with that much brightness of the light still let that many stars shine through behind it. I think it's pretty amazing.
There's just no light pollution there. It's just a fantastic place to visit.
And when was this taken?
That's a difficult question. I think it might have been 2012, 2013.
This is
14,
getting pretty early.
A few years ago. Again, that whole concept of time is messed up.
That's a great story. Do you mind telling us about some of the others, Connor?
Oh, no, go ahead.
Maria, would you like to choose one?
I'd say let's go for Petra.
Petra by Night.
Very famous location.
Legendary.
I always wanted to do this at night. So I'd done a bit of research before coming here, and it turns out that the candles and the whole event, Petra by Night, is only, I think it's 3 nights a week, or it used to be. So you kind of time your trip to coincide with one of these nights. We got down the sort of day before, which sort of surveyed the area, and there's lots of guides sort of hanging around, trying to get sort of your attention and get some business. So we thought, let's hire one of these guides. He drove us around to some of the areas sort of nearby. We chatted to him, and it turns out that his best friend, Mahmoud, was leading the tour that night. So we thought, oh, this could be quite interesting. So we made friends with our guide, and bought him ice cream and things like that. And then we said, oh, your friend tonight, maybe he could let us in sort of 10 minutes early. He said, okay, that's no problem. So the friend came and let us in. And if anyone's been to Petra, the gate is about 1.5 kilometers away from this area, and it goes through this very steep gorge called the Seek. So as soon as we got let in the gate, to give us extra time, there was me and 2 other photographers. We had our big backpacks on filled with camera gear, and we jogged, or pretty much ran as best we could, the whole way through this 1.5 kilometer gorge till we got to this point, just so we get no people in the photo. Frantically set up our gear, did a number of exposures.
6 minutes.
And then it was so stressful. I mean, there was people like starting to arrive, and you'd see a couple of tourists wandering in. You'd be shouting at each other trying to get the photo. It was one of the most stressful shoots that I've ever done, actually. It was totally worth it, but yeah, we were shouting at each other.
It's quite a bit of physical exertion just to get there, and with the packs set up and all that, and you get the time. Well, you got the shot. There's no doubt about that. Was it amazing? Is the spot really as amazing as?
Oh, it is fantastic. If you're going to go and visit there, definitely do the Petra by night, because it's a whole different experience. I mean, they do have like some music, and they bring around some tea and things like that, but that's not why a lot of people do it. It's just to see those candles and the stars and the stone city. It's unexplainable.
Photography part aside, and flipping back to the whole Lonely Planet guide, would you recommend the guided tour, hiring one of those guys? Was it a good thing for you?
We just pretty much used it for the connection. I'm sure there are some amazing sort of guides and some interesting parts. And what our guide did do was bring us to a place called Little Petra, which is like a smaller version of this, a couple of miles away. And there was hardly any tourists there, so that was totally worth it, just to see something a little bit different before the main event.
Not too dear to retain their services?
Not too dear, and then you can always slip them a little bit extra for getting in early.
There's a little advice here if you get to Petra. Guide might not be the worst thing you could do. Let's check out anything else you want to tell us about this one, or can I see the one that I'm curious about?
Oh, you go for your one.
And I've been back and forth on the two of these. As beautiful as Gleno is, these are exotic, and I gotta go Lithuanian Fairy Tale. I've got to hear about this shot from across the lake, long exposure, a Milky Way lit, perfect. I mean, the water's so still. This must have been something else.
This was interesting. It wasn't the easiest of shots to take, mainly because I'd gone to Lithuania. I'd stayed one night in the main city, Vilnius. I thought I want to go to the countryside and see this lake and castle. So I got a little Airbnb place, sort of right on the edge of the lake, facing the castle. I thought that's going to be perfect for sunrise or sunset or something like that. And I got there, and I said to the couple that owned the house, will I be able to see the stars tonight? And the man went, no, definitely not. And the wife was like, yes, you will. And I said, okay, in case I do, is there any sort of bicycle hire place here? And the guy said, I have a bicycle you can borrow. I will leave it later. And I said, brilliant. So later that night, I came out, found the bicycle propped up on the path, and I think it must have been about 40 years old. It was an old, like, metal lady's bicycle where the handlebars didn't quite match up to the direction that the wheel was pointing. The brakes didn't really work. So I jumped on this, and I thought, let's go into the countryside and find somewhere dark, because there's too many lights around this.
Wait a minute,
village.
hold on. You didn't know this castle was here. You're just trying to get the Milky Way.
I did know it was there, but the lighting around here just looked awful. The whole town had lights on, so the reflection in the water was
Light
dreadful.
pollution, yeah.
So I just thought, let's go a little bit further out. So even just a mile or two, that will be fine. I tell you, going uphill for a mile or two on this metal lady's bicycle was not easy. I must have been cycling for maybe an hour up this hill. Had to keep getting off and trying to push it, which was difficult.
Backpack?
Finally got backpack. Yeah.
Weighted
everything,
down?
all the gear. Finally got into the countryside. Couldn't find a viewpoint for this castle. I thought, right, I'll give up. So I got on the bike again, headed back. I wasted, an hour and a half at this point. Obviously, I couldn't slow down on this hill because the bike was so heavy and the brakes didn't work. But eventually, I made it back to the house in one piece to find that the whole village had their lights turned off, and this scene was just in front of me where the house was. So I left the bike down, got the tripod up, 25 seconds, got this exposure, and then it was straight back in the house. So I could have just waited there, and this would have presented itself, but no, I had to go on this Mission Impossible around the Lithuanian countryside on a lady's bicycle.
Yeah, you know what? If you hadn't gone, you might not have seen it on the way back.
Yeah, I could have just gone to bed and given up.
For every adventurer out there will know this one. Every wrong turn I've ever taken has got me where I am today, which is...
Yeah. The two photographers that I mentioned before, Greg Annandale and Dave Morrow, we've done a lot of trips together, and we've jokingly got what we call the god of photography, called Photos, which is about the same as photos. But we think that you have to appease Photos. So by going on a hike, for 2 hours, or going somewhere, getting up early, then you're more likely to get...
You must suffer for your work.
Exactly. If you just drive around in your car, get out, you're not going to get that same photograph as if you hike for an hour.
14 ounces of sweat in a kidney. All right, is that enough? Yes. Here's a photograph.
Yeah, so close to human sacrifice.
Brilliant. Photos. Record that one. That's going to be like Festivus in a couple of years. Everybody will be talking about photos. We're looking at 13 minutes left here. We'd love to get to some of the questions. You know what, Lauren, can you give me an idea? I don't have the doc up. How are we doing on questions?
Few relevant ones to what we were just talking about the night sky.
Let's bring those up in a second. I want to ask one more question. Wait, before I get to that one, what's in your bag, man? Everybody wants to know what's in your bag. How are you getting these shots? That big backpack you're dragging around, what's in it?
Let me have a look. I've got a tripod, obviously.
Three-legged thing. Hello.
It's looking a little bit worse for wear because I had it for many, many years, but it's lasted pretty well. So that's very important for a landscape and nighttime photographer.
Gotta get those long exposures.
Got my old f-stop bag here. Again, it's been around the world. It's had hundreds of thousands of miles, and it's held up really well.
Let's get a good look at that. I want to get a good look at what hundreds of thousands of miles looks like held up pretty well too.
Yeah, it's a little bit
come
more.
on, that's a new. Oh, that looks better.
Yeah.
That's more.
Let's have a look in the bag. It's actually one of the best rucksacks that I've ever had, like camera bag aside. So here, got my Nikon D810 with the best travel lens that I've ever used. It's a 28-300. So for those times you're not quite sure what you're going to be shooting, this is a wide angle, this is a very good tele. It's just absolutely fantastic. I do a lot of shooting from helicopters as well, and this is just perfect for that. You don't need to change lenses because you don't have time to do that. So yeah, 28-300, absolutely fantastic lens.
Right. File that one away, guys. 28-300. In fact, I'm going to file that one.
Landscape lens, the Nikon 14-24. Absolutely fantastic. It's a little bit battered because I've dropped it a few times, but it still works. It's pretty good. A couple of other...
I'm going to buy all of these lenses like next week.
Yeah, there's a 85 1.8 and a 50 1.4. Just get those shallow depth of field and
I think I have that last one there. Whew.
Pretty good. And then what else have I got? I've got this one here, just pretty good. It's my Irix lens, just a new brand that came out, and it's very good for star photography. This is a 15mm, I think. Yeah, very, very good. Manual focus, fixed lens, but perfect for shooting the stars.
All right, quick, jumping in, two things. First off, I think Maria and Lauren, let's file this away. Maybe we should have a little what's in his bag thing in the email that we send out.
Yeah, definitely.
And in addition to that, this is the most excited I've seen you. You're like a kid on Christmas Eve showing up your new toys right here on Christmas break. It's fantastic.
Oh, and Mavic drone as well.
Oh, he's got a drone.
Very hard to get hold of these days. Stock is in short supply.
Now, is that
So yeah,
everything? Is that it all? That's a pretty good bag you've got there.
pretty much. I don't like to have gear that I'm not going to use. I don't buy gear just for the sake of it. I've had lenses before and I've sold them if I don't use them.
You got
I bring.
a lithium-ion charging battery in there to charge everything up on USB and all that stuff?
Oh, I've got so
yeah.
many chargers. Most of my bag is chargers,
All right.
cables, and chargers. So you can go 150 to 500, but that's too big and it's in storage. So it's not much use at the minute.
How about this? Let's get one more question out there just for everybody, and then we're going to turn to the incoming questions. So really
We have
quickly,
lots of questions coming in.
well, no, we've kind of almost signaled for it. We've gone through your history and so forth, and I know this question is cliche, but there's hundreds and hundreds of people out there listening, and probably tens of thousands more that'll watch it after. You've had a beautiful rise to fame, and obviously it has a lot to do with talent and drive and dedication and strong legs and a strong back. But for those future Pathfinders out there, from your experiences, what one good piece of advice would you give?
Well, I think you were saying that a lot of it is to do with dedication, and in some respects that's true, but I haven't found myself dedicated as more the fact that I really enjoy what I do. You know, photography for me started as a hobby, and that was a real passion for me. Again, the traveling was a passion as well, and these two passions combined. And I didn't feel like I was working at it. I didn't feel like I was trying to climb to success or get noticed. It's just something that happened because I loved taking photographs and editing photographs and things like that. So I would tell people to not try and force it. You know, find what you really enjoy doing, whether that is photography or a particular style of photography contained within that.
Yeah.
And stick with that and work your heart out for that, because it will not feel like work.
Yeah.
And that's one of the best ways to get success, is if you really enjoy doing something.
Brilliant. That's good advice. Do it because you love it. We have questions. We have lots of questions coming in, and we only have about 7 or 8 minutes left, give or take, to answer questions and ask them. So please forgive us if we don't get to yours, but there are a couple here that are surfacing to the top. So we have Joyce. Hi, Joyce. Hi, Joyce. 1, 2, 3. Hi, Joyce.
Hi, Joyce.
Joyce asked a good question that I'm actually a little curious about. Is there a trick to taking photos of the stars and the northern lights?
I actually find it some of the easiest photography to do, because especially with the stars and the Milky Way, all the settings are the same, almost regardless of what camera you're using, what lens. The settings are pretty much the same all the way through. You just need to go somewhere where you can get the stars, so somewhere without light pollution, somewhere high up, maybe where the air quality is better. So that bit's simple. Again, I say with all photography, it's getting to the right place at the right time. That's the key with landscape photography.
Sorry, Connor. Joyce added on to that question and asked, she was having focusing issues, so if you have any tricks on how to focus on the stars at night.
With most lenses, you focus on infinity. So get your head torch on or your red light, focus on infinity. Or on some Canon lenses, it's just past infinity, which shouldn't be possible, but...
Wait a minute.
Yeah.
Is that to infinity and beyond?
Infinity and beyond, indeed. But yeah, focus on infinity and shoot sort of with a wide as lens as possible, and then hopefully you'll get everything in focus. But all my star shots are shot focused on infinity.
Good advice. Let's see what else we have here. Lauren Miller writes, what is your favorite location, Connor, in the whole world? Great scenery, people, food, everything in one.
Oof, it's difficult to get everything in one. Like a lot of the places that I think have got great scenery don't really have any people, because I like going quite remote places. But I'm a big fan of Burma or Myanmar, depending on what you want to call it. I think the people there are fantastic. The scenery is amazing. It's quite cheap. It's not overrun by tourists. Although conversely, I'm a big fan of Japan. I've been there twice in the last year, and it is like a whole other world. It's so clean. The people are amazing. The culture is fantastic. The scenery, I mean, even just the landscapes you wouldn't think about.
And the light is
Japan.
different.
Yeah, but I mean, I've been down. I've been into the sort of the Alps of Japan, And there's like, I just posted there on Instagram, these amazing huge trees, like 900-year-old cedars. I've been to the north of Japan, where in Hokkaido, where you go in the winter and you're knee deep in snow, and there's mountains and there's no people around. It's just, people don't think of landscapes when they think of Japan, but it is quite amazing.
Good answer. I appreciate that. We're going to try to get a couple more of them in here before we have to do our sign off. Great question. Just came in. James Sloan, and I think this is something I'm really curious about too. Is there somewhere you have not been yet that you really want to go?
There are lots of places that I really want to go. The more that I travel, my bucket list seems to get longer and longer, and I will never ever finish it.
Can you come up with one that's like right, maybe just that next one that's right on the horizon?
I'd love to go and explore sort of Patagonia, the southern tip of Chile. That would be quite amazing. Or maybe Svalbard, northern Norway, up near the North Pole. Completely opposite parts of the world, but they're both extreme, and I'd love to get to those places because the landscapes are phenomenal.
Hopefully you've got enough time to do them all and get to all of them, and we're going to work on getting enough time to get at least a couple of more questions. Here's one with a quick answer. Hi, Thomas. Thomas Black asks, what photo editing software do you use?
I use Lightroom. I'll do most of my processing in Lightroom. I'll do my pre-post processing. So I'll get it to maybe sort of 50 to 80% of what I want in Lightroom, and then I'll open it in Photoshop, and that's where I'll do some more sort of color corrections or maybe blending different exposures together, some luminosity masking, things like that. But it's a very simple approach, Lightroom and Photoshop, and I think they complement each other pretty well.
I think you mentioned this a little bit earlier, but Pat asks, hello, Pat. Pat asks, Connor, do you offer any online courses, classes, and tutorials? And how might these folks find them if you do?
I don't have any sort of official online courses at the minute. I do some sort of Skype one-to-one, things like that, but I do run international workshops as well. The next one's actually coming up in May, in a couple of months' time, in the Faroe Islands. We just had a cancellation, so there is actually a ticket free for that one. And I kind of run these kind of week-long international workshops, landscape photography, getting to know your camera, Lightroom, Photoshop.
Folks can find this information on your site?
Yes, it's on my site,
All right,
on the f8workshops.com website.
Check out Connor's site, thefellow.com and thefellow.smugmug.com, and all of his Instagram feeds. And by the way, some of that information is in the Lonely Planet handout there. Under handout, download that PDF. You'll be able to follow up on Connor and see where he's going. We have just, I'll be darned, the last 10 minutes went really fast. Just as with any adventure, good times always fly by, and it looks like our time together today is no different. That hour certainly went quickly. Connor, thank you so much for your time today and for all of your wonderful insight. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you very much for hosting, and thanks to Lauren and Maria and the rest of SmugMug and Lonely Planet. It's been fantastic speaking to you, everyone. It's
been great. We could have probably gone on for another hour. And of course, many thanks to Maria McKenzie for working so tirelessly to help put this together.
Thank you for hosting it and putting it all together.
And Lauren, you didn't get to talk too much today. We didn't get a chance to come around to it.
It's been a real pleasure to listen to you, Connor, and thank everybody for watching, and thank Connor and Maria for working tirelessly with me and being so patient to put this together. I know if you're like anything like me, then you're off to find your next adventure, because that's just gave me the Wanderlust bug all over again. So thank you, Connor, for your time. And thank you, Sean, for being a great host today as well.
I appreciate it, and thank you there. Let me just take another quick second here. We've got somebody working behind the scenes. Seth Salpan was here today from SmugMug, handling a lot of the inline in-chat questions. The guy who said welcome to everybody a few hundred times. So Seth, thank you very much for being here. We couldn't do this without you. Again, I'd like to take a moment to say thank you to Lonely Planet for helping us put together. Again, of course, Connor for being here and sharing all this wonderful insight and being a fan of us, and we're a fan of yours. Another little mention of our friends at Three-Legged Thing and Nikon and F-Stoppers Gear for their support during this event. And again, I'd like to take a moment to remind everybody that we will be sending out that email to you all in just a few days. And I did see a couple of questions came in for you latecomers who were asking about the recording. Yes, This webinar is being recorded, and we will be including a web link to watch the webinar again if you wish, as well as information on both Lonely Planet products and how to get your own SmugMug website to show off your amazing adventures, plus some unique discounts on both Lonely Planet and SmugMug. Those will all be in the mail, so keep your eyes out for them. Once again, thank you to everybody on behalf of SmugMug, on behalf of Lonely Planet. Great thanks to Connor, Lauren, and Maria. And thank you one and all for your participation and your great questions. I'm Sean Rogan, and I'll look forward to crossing paths with you all once again on the road. Take care, everybody.